Hi, y'all. Carrie D here from Coffee with Carrie. I hope that you are enjoying my new book, Homeschooling High School, a handbook for Christian education. In it, I walk you through just how easy and enjoyable it is to the high school years. Yes, mamas, it really is. It's doable and it's actually kind of fun. Okay, so if you haven't read my book yet, I highly recommend that you get it because I literally hold your hand as if we're having a coffee date and I'm explaining to you how you can homeschool through the high school years with your teen. So it's called Homeschool High School, a handbook for Christian education. You can get it at Amazon.com or at Christianbooks.com. Now, for those of you who have already read it, you know that there's a whole section in the middle of the book where I give you recommendations and explain how your student can learn or you can teach the different high school academic subjects and extracurricular elective subjects. Okay. And so I explain how you can teach and how your student can learn these different subjects in traditional ways and non-traditional ways, and what you can do for students who are college bound as opposed to students who are trade school bound, or for students who have no idea what they want to do after they graduate. Okay, so in this video, I would like to talk with you about one of the areas that if a mom or dad decides they're not going to homeschool, it's because of this. They are deathly afraid of teaching math or trying to cover high school math with their high schooler. Many of us didn't enjoy math in our high school years, and maybe like me, you barely passed your high school math, and so you're wondering, how in the world can I teach or help my high schooler with something that I was just so terribly bad at? Okay, but it's okay. You can do it. We're going to talk about, in my book, I talk about all the different ways that you can. But in this video, I want to share with you some of my favorite resources and curriculum that we have done for the high school math area. All right. Now, depending on what state you live in, whether you live in a state that's kind of very lax when it comes to high school requirements, like California, where I am, or Texas or Utah, where they don't specifically tell you everything you have to do, or maybe you live in a state that is highly regimented and they tell you exactly your student has to have Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry. Okay. But no matter what state you live in, you want to make sure your student does at least Algebra 1. That's your basic requirement right there, no matter what state you live in. And no matter what career your student decides to go in, it just really is good for them to have an Algebra 1 basic math knowledge. Okay. But because you homeschool, if your student is maybe not mathematically gifted, who says you have to do Algebra 1 in 1 year? You could do algebra, half of the textbook or half of the course in their freshman year, and take your time and make sure your student understands it. And then you can finish it up their sophomore year. Who says you have to do it in a whole year? You could split it up that way if you want. Or if your student is mathematically gifted, who says they have to take their time and do it in 1 year? They could plow through it in a semester if they're able to do that. Okay. However, let me get back to, no matter what state you live in, you definitely want to make sure you do Algebra 1. And then most states will say, and one other, or at least one other higher mathematics. So that can be Algebra 2, that can be geometry. Some states do tell you you have to do all three of those, and then they leave calculus and trig and statistics up to you. All right. So just make sure what what your state is recommending that you do as a high schooler. All right. So when it comes to all of these, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, geometry, my favorite resource that we used and a lot of our friends used was teaching textbooks. Now, the reason I love this one so much is because the kids could go at their own pace. So if they wanted to go faster, or they could go faster because the material was they were catching on, they could. It comes with videos. It's interactive, so the student can input into the computer their answers, and it tells them immediately if it's right or wrong, gives them an opportunity. Do you want to see how it's done? Do you want to try again? Do you want another explanation? And so there's some interaction going on, whereas if they're just using a traditional textbook, which is okay, but for our family, it wasn't, and I'm here to recommend what I think works really well. Your student can go through a whole lesson and do 25 problems all wrong, and they don't realize they did it all wrong until they check it or you check it. Okay, which is one of the reasons why I loved teaching textbooks. Now, a lot of our friends use one that was very similar to it, the CMT, which I think is it looks very similar. So, I think any kind of online, and again, it's not a lecture, a live lecture, right? So the student can do this at their own pace. That's interactive. It's going to be very helpful for a high school student because by the time they get to high school, they are more self-directed. They are learning how to self teach themselves. They're self-taught in a lot of areas, even in math. Okay. So if your student would like to use some sort of like traditional approach to learning math, but they don't want to do it in a classroom setting, like maybe at a co op or in dual enrollment at the college, I think teaching textbooks is a fabulous way to go. Another great one that's video, it's interactive. It's called Video Text, and not many people know about this one, but he covers Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 in one course. So when you're done with this course, your student actually has both, and they have a fabulous foundation. And I love this one because it's conceptual. So he explains in real world concepts why these different mathematical principles work and how you can use them in the real world, as well as explaining to you how to do the different algorithms and things like that. So that one's called Video Text. Now, another favorite is Saxon. So if your student is using Saxon or the co-op that your student is taking a math class in is using Saxon, and maybe it's a little too dry for you or for your student, I highly recommend looking into Nicole the Math Lady or Math with Mr. D. And what Nicole the Math Lady does and Math with Mr. D is they follow the Saxon Algebra 1, Algebra 2 geometry textbook, but they're lectures that your student can watch. And so they do a great job of teaching the concept so that your student doesn't have to teach themselves. Okay. So those are just some really great suggestions that if you don't want to outsource and have someone else teach your student algebra 1, algebra 2, things like that, and they do want to do it at home, or you want them to do it at home, these are some great alternatives. Okay. Now, if your student would like to have someone else teach them or have a live teacher, or you want your student to have someone hold them accountable for their homework and their testing and all that kind of stuff, there are tons of online courses. I highly recommend the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They have an online academy and courses. They have online courses that require your student to tune in at a certain time on a certain day, and it's live lecture, and there's questions and answers. So I love those. I think those are great. I know a lot of families use Khan Academy, and if you find that that's helpful for you, then keep using it. I always say, if you find something that works, keep using it until it doesn't work anymore. I just find that these other resources are just a little bit more systematic. They're easier to follow through, and they're easier for the parent because you can learn right alongside your student if you want to, or it's easier for your student to teach themselves or on their own. Okay. Now, if your student is not mathematically gifted or doesn't intend on going into a career that uses higher mathematics, doesn't plan on going to a math or science career, then I highly recommend, well, actually, I recommend this for all high school students, but especially the ones who are not going into a career with math and science, is make sure that sometime during their high school years, they do some sort of personal finance course. We absolutely love the Dave Ramsey personal finance class for homeschoolers. They revamped it this year. So the book is new, the lectures are updated. It's a really great program. I think every high schooler should learn how to manage their money and how to be good stewards of their money. So the Dave Ramsey homeschool course for high schoolers is really great. And I also recommend that your students do some sort of entrepreneurship or some sort of business, create their own business, work for a business, intern somewhere, where they learn how to make money and the ideas, the principles of free market and free enterprise and supply and demand. And in the process, they're making money and they're learning how to create a business and work with people. So there really aren't too many specific courses out there for entrepreneurship. I absolutely love Connor Boyack. He's the author of Skip College, the book, and he's also the author of The Tuttle Twins. And so he's got a whole curriculum for high schoolers on this entrepreneurship or economics that I think is fabulous as well, because it's taught from a biblical perspective. But you don't really need a particular curriculum if you don't want one. You could just get your student involved in not teaching, in starting his or her own business and then following through on that. Okay, and all the things that comes with running a business. And then on the transcript, you could denote it as personal finance, or you could denote it as microeconomics, or you could just simply put entrepreneurship, or you could put business math if they were responsible for keeping track of invoices and customers and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways you can give your student high school credit on their transcript if they're not doing a traditional math course. These are some of the ways. As I mentioned in the science curriculum video, another great alternative for your high schooler who is college-minded, knows they want to go to college, wants to save some money and time, is to take the CLEP exams for, say, college algebra or intermediate algebra or statistics. So you could go to the CLEP website and you can see all the different college level math CLEP exams that your student can take. And the beauty of CLEP is if they pass the CLEP exam with, it depends on the college and what score they require, but it's usually a 50, 60 or higher. If they get one of those passing scores, the college will give him credit for college algebra or whatever the CLEP exam they took. So if they take the statistics CLEP exam and they score whatever the score that's needed for that particular college, they get credit for the Statistics 101 class. They get that class out of the way, and they only spent $120 taking the CLEP exam as opposed to spending $3,000, $4,000 to take the statistics class at the college. Okay, so this is a fabulous way to save money and time. I love modernstates.org. These are video courses taught by professors around the United States at different colleges like Harvard and Stanford and USC and Tufts University and Brown University. And they prepare the student for a particular CLEP exam. So if your student wants to take the statistics CLEP exam, they go to Modern States, they sign up for the statistics CLEP prep class. They pay I think it's $120, which actually is how much it costs to take a CLEP exam. It's at their own pace, so they watch the different videos. The professors prepare them for what the information they need to know for that particular math CLEP exam. And then when they're done, they get a voucher to take that particular CLEP exam. And so they get to take the exam for free. So basically, they are getting 2 for 1. They're getting instruction and a voucher for the CLEP exam by doing these videos at Modern State. So I absolutely love them. I think it's a great way for students to save time and money if they are college bound. And if they spend an entire year or an entire semester prepping for statistics or college algebra, you can also give them credit for that on their transcript. You could just put statistics. And then when they pass the CLEP exam, then you know that you're definitely giving them credit for that. Also, keep in mind, even though they're in high school, they're still not too young or too old, I should say, to play games. And yes, there are tons of great math games out there at the high school level. 3 of my favorites. One is called Absolute Zero. It's a card game, and it's teaching them about absolute value, positive and negative numbers, integers, things like that. It's a great game. Again, it's called Absolute Zero. Another one is a board game called Equate. It's a lot like Scrabble, except with numbers. So they're creating equations on the board instead of words. And when I say equations, I'm not talking about quadratic equations. I'm talking about, 23 times this equals whatever. Okay, so it's a really fun game for high schoolers to play. Also, any version of the 24 card game, because that teaches them order of operations and discrete mathematics. So that's a really great one. It's called 24. It's an old card game. They have them at all levels, but there's one specifically for integers. So it will have positive and negative numbers and absolute value in it. Okay. And then also, I played a lot of card and dice games with my high schoolers that taught them about integers, positive and negative numbers, order of operations, even absolute value, things like that. And so at my YouTube channel, Coffee with Carrie Homeschool Help, I have a whole playlist of math games that you can play with dice and cards. And in that playlist, I think there's over a dozen games. There's several in there for high schoolers. And so the beauty of playing games is not only do your students learn things faster, because that's just what science tells us. When they learn through games and play, they don't need as many repetitions to learn something. But you can also do it with the entire family. So while your high schooler might be doing Algebra 1 on their own and not hanging out with a family, you can at least be playing some fun games, card games with the younger students and your teenager all together. And it's review work and it's also fun. Okay. So that's at my YouTube channel. So these are just some of the things that I mention in my book, Homeschool High School, a handbook for Christian education. I have a whole chapter on teaching math for the college bound, the trade school bound, and the I don't know what I want to do bound student, and traditional ways to teach them and non-conventional ways to put it on your transcript, all that kind of stuff. But here is where I talked about just some of our favorite curriculum that we use throughout the years. So hopefully you can get my book at Amazon.com or Christianbooks.com. Also, I do have quite a few episodes at my podcast, Coffee with Carrie Homeschool Podcast, on teaching high school and teaching math, even for the younger kids. Okay. And then if you're not quite sure where to go, just go to my website, coffeewithcarrie.org, and that will bring you to any and all of this. Okay. So thanks for hanging out with me. Enjoy your time learning with your teen, even if you're doing math together.